It's 4 o'clock. Should we start? All right. It's 4 o'clock, and I'm calling the borough meeting to order on July 27th, and I am doing the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, adequate and electronic notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in the Beach Haven Municipal Building on the borough website and mailing the same to the Beach Haven Times, the Asbury Park Press, and the Press of Atlantic City. Mr. Batista.
Here.
Mrs. Ball Miller.
Here.
Ms. Lambert.
Here.
Ms. Snyder.
Here.
Mayor Davis.
Here.
Before we move on to the minutes, I just wanted to make a quick announcement that petitions are available for the unexpired term of former Councilwoman Chris Rutherford. Those petitions are available in my office to appear on the ballot at the November general election. The deadline to submit a petition to run for that vacant seat will be August 24th. So anyone that's interested, or if you know someone that's interested in running for that seat, please stop by my office and pick up a petition as soon as possible. I have the June 12th special meeting, the June 12th executive session, and the June 12th, 2023 regular meeting minutes for approval without formal reading.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Ordinance 2023-16C, an ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 141, Peace and Good Order in the Borough Code of the Borough of Beach Haven, County of Ocean, State of New Jersey, to amend and clarify sections of the Borough Code related to vessels within the borough's riparian grant area. Final reading.
Could I make a comment? Apparently, Jeanette Lloyd's writing up a historical review of this area, and it might be helpful if we postpone this. If we could postpone this to the next meeting until we had that.
It was postponed from June till now. I expect that it's going to have to be rewritten and reintroduced. I would recommend that you just withdraw it at this point if that's what your intention is.
What's the rest of the council think?
I would say withdraw.
I know that Frank Little was out there this week doing his survey.
Mhm.
I know that the application to the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection for our waterfront development permit will be submitted by next week.
Mhm.
I would go along with Colleen and withdraw it at this point in time. I think we're all on the right track with this, and to get it right, we want to have a nice script. I know Jeanette's working on it, so.
Right. Okay. So? Do I have a second? Do we need to go through
Make
the
a
formal
motion?
process? Yeah. So is there a second to Colleen? So
I'll second.
recommendation.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Batista.
Yes.
Mrs. Ball Miller.
Abstain.
Ms. Lambert.
Yes.
Ms. Snyder.
Yes.
Mayor Davis.
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-20, an ordinance of the Borough of Beach Haven in the County of Ocean, State of New Jersey, dissolving the sewerage authority pursuant to the NJSA 40:14A-4H and NJSA 40A:5A20, and establishing a sewer utility. Final reading.
This is the final reading, so I can open it to the public. Would anybody like to come forward and speak to this? Is anybody on Zoom?
Anyone on Zoom wish to be heard for this ordinance? You can raise an electronic hand.
I just have a quick question if nobody's speaking. I know we said before this is going to fall under the auspices of the council, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anybody in particular specifically who is going to be in charge of this?
Yes. Mike has done the most of the work on it, but there is a person, the only holdover really from the sewer authority.
Use your microphone.
I'm sorry. That basically has his certificate that he needs, and he's working on his next step. And he's been a very competent employee, so he would be overseeing the sewer authority. I think are some details to iron out as
Okay, but
well.
I mean, all questions, concerns and everything would be going to him and he would be, okay, thank you.
Colleen, also, we are continuing the gentlemen that were serving on the sewer authority. Whitney Marshall, Jim Safara, Elmer Pence, and Rich Conaway will continue to serve as they had before. What my understanding is they'll be meeting monthly to review the bills and the capital projects and so forth. And so we would be looking to their guidance as well.
Good. I just wanted to, because we're taking on a big thing and I just wanted to make sure that we have our ducks in a row here.
All right. That's good. No, there's no questions or comments from the audience. I'll close the floor. And do I have a motion to approve ordinance 21?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Before well,
Go ahead.
I would just like to make a comment that the sewer authority has done a spectacular job in maintaining our sewer system. It just is the right time at this point in time, administratively, with the billing process and the personnel, that the sewer authority be refocused as a sewer utility. But I want to thank Whitney Marshall and Diane Marshall, Kurt, who is the main player there, and the members of the board for their cooperation during this period of trying to figure out the best way to merge this into the Borough of Beach Haven. So I want to thank those people involved.
Thank you, Mike. Absolutely.
Mr. Batista,
Yes.
Mrs. Ballmiller,
Yes.
Ms. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Snyder,
Yes.
Mayor Davis.
Yes.
Ordinance 21, an ordinance of the Borough of Beach Haven in the County of Ocean, State of New Jersey, creating the Borough of Beach Haven Sewer Utility and establishing a sewer utility fund. Final reading.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this? It's just the sequel to what we did above. Okay, and anybody on Zoom? I guess not.
No, and we did have to apply to the local finance board the beginning of July, and we were able to get on their July agenda, and the application for the merger was approved.
Great. Okay, is there a motion to approve?
I
So
make a
moved.
motion we approve.
I'll second it.
I'd like to make one other comment, Mayor. if
Please
you don't-
do.
With regard to this on the borough side, our finance department and our public works supervisor were just infinitely helpful in making all this happen, merging the databases, creating a platform to send out new bills and so forth. Sherry Bowler and Jen Corso in our finance department, and of course, Chris Carson in our public works department had a tremendous amount to do with this. And of course, our borough manager, Sherry Mason here. So without all of those people working as well as they did, this happened very, very quickly and without conflict. And I look forward to everybody working together in the future for the benefit of all of our residents here in town.
Mr. Batista,
Thank you. Yes.
Mrs. Ballmiller,
Yes.
Ms. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Snyder,
Yes.
Mayor Davis.
Yes.
Ordinance 2023-22C, an ordinance amending Chapter 77 curfew of the Borough Code of the Borough of Beach Haven, County of Ocean, State of New Jersey, to change the juvenile curfew to 10 p.m. Final reading.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this? Okay, yeah,
Come on up.
line up.
Here's the picture. I'm going to leave these with you.
Oh, thank you.
Deb Whitcraft, 528 Dock Road. I would like to not only support this ordinance, but ask that everything be done by the governing body and our town manager to put this in effect before August 16th, this curfew ordinance. It is a huge problem. The number of calls that we have for underage intoxicated kids on the street are breaking all records. And, although it's a great ordinance, it's like building a fence after the horse gets out. If there's any way, Sherry, that this can be expedited to take effect sooner, we are overwhelmed with first aid calls. I'm not blaming any bars. I'm not blaming teen night. I'm just saying we've become a dumping ground, Beach Haven. And we've got young kids all over the place. Our police department has their hands tied. There's so little they can do to regulate these kids. And I think the curfew ordinance is the right step to bring some control to this. When we're tied up, when our ambulances are tied up with 15 and 16-year-old drunken kids out in the street that we have to babysit, that means when I get a call, and we had one of these recently, happened to be an employee of the borough with severe abdominal pains, we had to go to mutual aid to get an ambulance to take care of that patient because we were babysitting two 15-year-old drunks. So whatever can be done to put this in effect sooner than August 16th, I ask that you please consider it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
Next.
I stand here.
You can, or you're gonna stand there.
Sure. I'm Jill Fallows Macaluso, and I own a home on 201 East 34th Street. And I wrote to the town council yesterday upon learning of this curfew, and I wanted to summarize my letter for the public record. I wrote on behalf of myself and my husband, Peter, to share our concerns about the changes and sincerely ask that you could reconsider. We're the parents of 3 daughters under the age of 18, and the island is a special place for our children, and so proud that they have become active and productive members of the Beach Haven community. Nola, our oldest, works at the Brain Freeze. Our middle daughter, Callie, works at the Woohoo. Callie and our youngest daughter, Margot, are lifeguards in training at the Beach Haven lifeguard programs. Our daughters are regular society volunteers in the community. And I would like to emphasize that our children, like so many others, struggled significantly during quarantine and remote learning. They suffered emotionally and socially, and the island has been a place that helped heal the wounds they suffered during isolation. The heart of our island, Beach Haven, has been one of the few places we feel safe allowing our children to ride their bikes and spend time with their friends in the evening until after 10 o'clock. They enjoy everything from Fantasy Island to eating at the Chegg and attending teen nights at the Marlin that do not even start until 9:45. We understand the curfew changes are being considered for safety and a growing loitering problem, and I recognize that there are legitimate concerns that need to be addressed, but we respectfully ask that you consider alternative measures to address the disorderly conduct of the wrongdoers as opposed to a very universal and conservative curfew. Of shore towns with curfews, 10 is the earliest and only in place in a handful, especially for a 16 or 17-year-old young adult who, like our daughters, attends a long day at lifeguard in training and then works until the early evening. In fact, my 2 older daughters are at work right now. Imposition of this curfew will have a negative, not positive impact on the broader universe of children and will likely lead to them being more inclined to go indoors, drink, vape, or potentially even use drugs. The 10 p.m. curfew is going to require additional police efforts to enforce, especially with the well-needed exceptions that you've articulated for dining and for example, the Fantasy Island amusement park. I'd like to say that the majority of children are not engaging in misconduct, so it's not appropriate or fair to impose such restrictive rules universally, especially with such negative side effects. I say this just not out of feeling as a parent, but out of my professional experience. I care deeply about children. I'm a member of the Board of Education in my hometown in Morristown, New Jersey, where I'm responsible for setting policies related to discipline. And in my day job as an executive for a top company, I'm a compliance officer responsible for setting policies, enforcing, investigating, and disciplining misconduct. And I have deep expertise in behavioral science. And I know that when you're dealing with children, our most precious and vulnerable asset, we want to see them grow and flourish into active and productive members of society. And this won't be achieved through hard rules. We respectfully ask that you reconsider and hit pause. It is, almost August now. It hasn't been in place all summer. Perhaps take the break over the winter months to look more closely at data coming from the curfew-related summons issued over the past few years. If this is such a successful tool that's been used by the police department, can you look at the data on how it's been used to enforce the 12 p.m. curfew and whether it's positively impacted any of the negative outcomes?
That's time, Jill.
Thank you so much for listening to me. I really appreciate it. I just like to say that I care about safety, but also emotional health and well-being of children, which is also equally important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else from the audience like to speak? John? Is there anybody on, check Zoom? if
No.
there's no- Okay.
John Halprin, 319 Fairview Avenue, Beach Haven. I agree with Deb Whitcraft. I'm totally in support of this ordinance. I think it's been a long time coming. I also want to just advise the public that the ordinance is intended for loitering and other issues that appear in our neighborhoods. And we have an active neighborhood watch program that I don't think all the public's aware of, that if there's anything going on that impacts the safety, health, and welfare of your community and your neighborhood, you could attend this meeting. It's Tuesday night at 6 p.m. It's chaired by the police chief, so he could at least put his officers on alert that you may have a problem in your given area. So I think that's advisable. I know the Beach Haven Taxpayer Association about a year ago put something in the paper to make people aware of this program, but I think it really has to be reinforced. Thanks.
Is it Tuesday night or Thursday night?
Tuesday.
In this room, come in the back.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the audience want to speak to this? Okay, I mean, is there anybody on council that wants to speak to it?
Can we hear from the chief?
Yeah, I wanted to call the chief. I just didn't know if anybody in council wanted to say anything first.
All right, so I'll just explain what our idea is with this. Other communities, shore communities have implemented a 10 p.m. curfew. We've been getting a lot of feedback from our summer officers about kids are posting online. Seaside has a 10 p.m. curfew. It's still midnight in Beach Haven. Go down there. We're getting a lot of kids that are coming down here that aren't staying on the island. They're coming down here specifically to hang out. We're trying to put a stop to some of the problems we're having. We're having a lot of fights. At the parks, they're lighting trash cans on fires. There's groups of kids hanging out. You have kids come by and throw fireworks into the group of kids. Eventually somebody's going to get hurt bad. We addressed some of the concerns that people had with businesses. Fancy Island, teen nights. We have two different venues for teen night in town. Chicken and the Egg. Some of the ice cream places, they won't be affected. We're not interrupting businesses. It's the parks and the streets and street ends. We already have a 9 p.m. curfew on the beach, which has been great. We've had a lot less complaints from the oceanfront homes and the oceanfront blocks that there's less damage. Is my time almost up?
No.
So I think a 10 p.m. curfew could help us at least have a tool with this. As you know, we don't have many things that we can actually have teeth with the juveniles because of the Juvenile Justice Reform Act. This gives us something that if we continuously are warning a kid over and over again for loitering, for fighting, for littering, for causing problems, doing stuff like that, we can actually write them for the curfew violation. The big groups, we can keep them moving. If they start to create a problem, we can get them out of town.
Are you going to close the park, like Taylor Avenue Park at
Yes.
10 o'clock then?
Well, so, and that's the other thing. A couple of council members had asked us to close the park at 9 p.m. That's up to you guys, whatever you guys want to decide. I still would like to see it close at the same time as the curfew because my fear is that we push the kids out of the park at 9 o'clock. Now we're going to be chasing them around town for an hour until the curfew at 10 o'clock. But I'll do whatever the council wants. If you want to close down at 9 o'clock, we'll shut it down at 9 o'clock, but we will be chasing them around for an hour. You just as a group, you need to let me know what you'd like to do.
So if a kid is doing something constructive, like buying an ice cream cone or.
If there's a line, we've talked specifically about Ben and Jerry's. If there's a line of kids at Ben and Jerry's waiting to get ice cream and they're not causing a problem and there's no fights going on, they're simply in line waiting, we're not going to bother them. We're not going to talk to them. We're not going to in any way interact with them. But if they get their ice cream and then they're standing in the corner and let's say throwing their, arguing with each other, hey, after curfew, time to go home. Still, we have to follow the rules of the Juvenile Justice Reform Act. They're going to get multiple warnings before they ever get a ticket. Same thing we do now. Curfew is midnight. At midnight, we start telling them, this is your warning. By 12:30 or so, the kids are gone. We probably over the summer have issued a handful, maybe 10 curfew violations. I'd have to get the exact number. I'd have to go see the court clerk, but it hasn't been very many. But the kids know that for the few kids that we have issued tickets to for curfew, they were made an example of because of their behavior. And it worked. The kids leave at curfew. So if we have a 10 o'clock curfew, the hope is by 10:30, 11 o'clock, a majority of the kids are going to be gone. And maybe a majority of the kids that are coming from out of town or off the island won't bother coming over to be able to hang out for an hour.
And this only applies to kids that are under 18, right?
Yes, if you're over 18, you can hang out wherever you want, except for the parks will be closed. And same thing we do now. At midnight, when the midnight curfew comes, we shut down the parks. If you're 18, like go somewhere else. The parks are closed.
Okay. Any questions for the chief?
No.
I do.
Sure.
Chief, you know that you and I have had quite a back and forth on this. I am not in favor of a 10 o'clock curfew on a summer barrier island. I just think 10 o'clock is too early. As the woman gave all the appropriate reasons here, I thought she did a very nice job. But I do recognize the problem, Deb. I do see the problem. And the question is, how do you balance fixing the problem without breaking something else? You have assured me that this initiative is to give you a tool to deal with the problem element that Deb and everybody who's out there sees. Kids who are drinking in public, who are 15 and 16 years old, completely inappropriate. I've been down to the park there. You have older people on little kids' swings and sliding down the slides. The park should be closed at 9 o'clock. It's not an adult park, it's a kids' park. I believe that park, by having it open, has created a venue for these kids to come and enjoy hanging out. And I think once that park is closed, you're going to see people stop coming for the reasons that, like you just said, they're not going to come for an hour and then having to get kicked out. So I am going along with this tonight based on your recommendation and your assurances to me and to this council that this is a tool for you to deal with a problem element. And hopefully we're able to, hopefully it is effective and we don't have to keep this in place for a permanent fix, right? So I'm relying on you and I'm relying on your assurances that Ben and Jerry's ice cream kids aren't going to be harassed out front unless they are creating a problem. And the Woohoo is going to stay open and people are going to be able to ride their bikes in there, get an ice cream, and maybe ride down to the bayfront, eat their ice cream, and then ride home. You can see the problem elements. And I think you recognize that. And I'm relying on you to follow through with all the discussions that we had in enforcing this ordinance and recognizing that we're on a beach town and 10 o'clock is, in my opinion, a little too early.
So as we've discussed a lot of times, if it's 10:30 at night and a kid is riding his bike down the street, technically he's in violation of curfew. We're gonna tell him, hey, just so you know, it's 10 PM is curfew, you gotta head home. If he's like, hey, I'm just going to 7-Eleven to get something to drink, all right, have fun. So he's not bothering anybody. We're not giving him a hard time. He might be told that there's a curfew, but if he's not doing anything wrong, we're not bothering them. If a different group of kids they're fighting, or like we have out in front of Bay Village Pizza occasionally, the group of people, juveniles, will start fighting, start throwing stuff out in the roadway. Those kids will be told curfew, time to leave, and if they don't leave after several warnings, they will get summonses. But I don't see that happening. They don't want tickets, and we have to give a number of warnings before we can actually issue. So it's not just going to be a random, we're going to walk up to a kid that's walking down the street and take their name and write them a ticket. That's not going to happen.
You know, you and I drew a parallel on a situation when we were talking the other day, and nobody does 55 miles an hour on the parkway. But if you slide by a trooper and you're doing 70, you kind of look at each other and away you go. How do you selectively enforce this whole thing? That's been my problem on this whole thing. So I don't want.
We're going to address the problems the same way we address them now. If it's 12:30 at night and a kid is going to Chicken and the Egg to pick up his food, that kid doesn't get bothered. If there's a group of 20 kids who are hanging out up on Beach and 10th, and they're yelling and shouting, and it's 12:30 at night and they're, disturbing the neighbors, those kids are going to get sent home.
I agree.
And it might end up in a ticket, but
I just want the people who are responsible and here to have a good time, not to feel threatened that they're riding their bike at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night in violation of a curfew, and they see a police officer and they duck around the corner so they're not spotted or something. I don't want to see that. Okay, thank you, Chief.
Sure.
I'd like to just say, I thank you, Chief, for your thoughts on this. And I also, much like Michael, have really vacillated about this. I'm not a fan of curfews. I think that it sort of violates certain rights that we have. But I think that it's based upon your recommendation and what we know is going on here in town, much to our dismay, and what other towns are doing to proactively try and take care of the situation, at least to mitigate it. I think that we have an obligation to at least give it a try. And that is why I'm going to vote in favor of the curfew. I think that it's, as you said, you want to just give it a try. And I think that in my mind, this curfew will be a temporary curfew, in that we can revisit it next year, see if it's been effective. We had talked about using it for the rest of this summer and the beginning of next summer. And then as a council, I would like to, remember to discuss it and to look into it again, see if it's necessary or if it's working, et cetera. I mean, many times at the neighborhood watch meetings and to our meetings, we've had neighbors that live right next door. And with all due respect to the woman that emailed us and came in and spoke, if you lived there, you would have a different perspective as well. It's just been a nightmare for these neighbors. And I live in Beach Haven, and I'm lucky enough to live on a quiet street. But, if I do have to venture out at night, and if you're traveling south on Beach from the north, many nights, you'll have a whole bunch of kids on bikes and they're just straight across. I mean, many of us have seen it and been through it, and it's scary because they're like, it's just a tough situation. And there seems to be a disregard, certainly, for law enforcement, because most kids know they can kind of get away with many, many things that they couldn't used to get away with. So based upon that and your recommendation, which I really respect, then I plan on voting for it tonight. Thank you.
So I know Mr. Batista had brought up 7-Eleven in the past, and we don't have many things that we can do to help 7-Eleven out. And this is.
No, they should have security at 7-Eleven.
Yes, but this is something that, they have groups of kids that go in there late night and steal everything on their shelves.
Yeah.
So this is something that will be able to help, hopefully address some of their problems also.
Hopefully it gives the young generation an understanding of law and order, and we can get back to where we were as Kitty said, in a short period of time.
Honestly, I think it's sad that it's come to this, but it has. And it actually came to this a couple of years ago. And I think the Juvenile Justice Reform Act was kind of the icing on the cake. I know I made countless phone calls, wrote letters, everything else. Nobody cared. And as the problem progressed, it got worse and worse. And it's like, well, what are we going to do? And all we do is get letters, phone calls, this town's out of control. You got to do something. You got to do something. So we're doing something. I'm comfortable with this. Is it my first choice? No. And do I, having grown up here, we didn't have to deal with this, but we didn't have the problems. Beach Haven is now the #1 hotspot. Everybody wants to come here for better or for worse, and they're not behaving. And to that lady's point, it's always the conundrum. You've got the good kids and they're getting punished too. But at the end of the day, as town leaders, we have a responsibility to make our streets as safe as possible. And if you feel this is going to be a step in the right direction, I agree with you. And let's see what happens.
Yeah. And we've been going around and contemplating the 10 p.m. curfew multiple times, not only this summer, but last summer as well. It's always been the last resort. And we constantly decide or discuss solutions and, what can we do? And there's really nothing that we can do besides enforce a curfew. Unfortunately, this is a state law, the Juvenile Reform Act. And again, like Colleen said, it's up to us to keep our streets safe. None of us really want to do this, but it is our last resort and we have to try it. So I'm definitely support this ordinance. And we both have young children that are definitely not happy with this as well.
I know.
But, hopefully that it will deter some large groups of kids from coming into Beach Haven and vandalizing and causing problems for the good kids that just want to be here and enjoy and have a good time. So we have to try this.
Remember, we have a curfew. We're changing the time of the curfew.
Correct.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
It's not.
So, yeah, yes, you may come forward.
You're saying you'd like to revisit.
Come on
it.
up, speak. You have to come up and state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Jess Carlin. I live at 809 South Atlantic.
I'm sorry,
You're
I
sa-
didn't hear the last name.
Carlin, Carlin.
Thank you.
Since you're all saying you'd like to revisit it, can you make it a year? You know what I mean? Can you make it be revisited? Give it a year date or something so that it definitely gets revisited?
I don't think we need to give it a date. It'll before the summertime, we're constantly meeting and, discussing about the upcoming season. That's what
Right.
we're preparing
So
for. So we'll
that's
look
gonna
at
do
the data from
Right.
August and especially from Ocean City, from Sea Isle, from Wildwood that are also imposing lower curfews. So
Right.
we'll
Okay.
take everything into consideration.
All right, does anybody else want to speak before I close the floor? No, so I'm closing the floor. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Batista,
Yes.
Mrs. Ball Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Snyder,
Yes.
Mayor Davis.
Yes.
All matters listed under item consent agenda are considered to be routine by the municipal council and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed. Any items requiring expenditure are supported by a certification of availability of funds, and any item requiring discussion will be removed from the consent agenda and discussed separately. All consent agenda items will be reflected in full in the minutes. Resolution 162, authorizing the Borough of Beach Haven to submit an application for funding to the United States of America, acting through the Rural Housing Service, Department of Agriculture, for renovations to the Beach Haven Emergency Operations Center at 420 Pelham Avenue. 163, approving submission of a grant application and execution of a grant contract with the New Jersey Department of Transportation for the state fiscal year 24 road reconstruction project, Essex Avenue, Bay Avenue to the westerly end, and Glendola Avenue, Beach Avenue to Bay Avenue in the amount of $796,890. Resolution 166, acknowledging the hiring of Kurt Ostiger as sewer repair supervisor. 168, approving the recommendation of the Joint Land Use Board of the Borough of Beach Haven, recommending designation of Block 205, Lot 1 and 2 as a condemnation area in need of redevelopment. 169, approving membership to the Beach Haven Volunteer Fire Company and the New Jersey Firemen's Association. And Resolution 170, authorizing award of a professional service contract with Pillar Design Studios for additional planning and design of the Beach Haven Skate Park.
Is there anybody in council that would like to remove any of these resolutions for further discussion?
Yes, I would.
Which one?
168-2023.
Okay, thank you. Any others?
No, I just wanted to just mention that the skate park, I see people that were, concerned about that being at Walsh Field, and that's to possibly look to redesign at Taylor Avenue.
Okay. All right, so is there a motion to approve? the
I have
res-
a question. If I, 'cause since I'm new, I want to just clarify. It's one vote for the remaining.
Correct.
Uh,
If you want to talk about anything special, we just remove it from the list and talk about, and we'll vote in.
no, that's okay. I'll go with it.
Okay.
Sorry.
So in that case, is there a motion to approve everything but 168? The
Motion to
other
approve.
resolutions.
Thank you, Colleen. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Mr. Batista?
Yes.
Mrs. Ball Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Snyder?
Yes.
Mayor Davis?
Yes.
Resolution 168, 2023, approving the recommendation of the Joint Land Use Board of the Borough of Beach Haven, recommending designation of Block 205, Lot 1 and 2 as a condemnation area in need of redevelopment.
Okay, I asked to have that removed because I personally feel that this should be tabled. After listening to the Land Use Board on the 17th, and after receiving a letter from Mrs. Ward, the attorney representing Beach Haven Auto Corporation, I feel that the corporation is taking action to move forward with this. They are willing to do the necessary steps to get this site remediated. I think that it would be a waste of taxpayer money to duplicate that effort. I think as long as they're more than willing to do it, I trust them to do it. It was always kind of a concern for me, but it sounded like, this was kind of a dire situation. And subsequent testimony has said it's not as dire as we may have originally thought. I'm honestly not sure. I'm not an expert. But at the end of the day, if we are on a parallel course with the corporation to clean this up, and they have a buyer. So it seems to me for us to jump in at this point is premature. I know there was a lot that went on ahead of time, and whatever missteps or whatever lack of communication went on, we're here now. And I think it is important now that we table this, let the corporation deal with it, and let the taxpayers not have to deal with it. I think, a salient point too is the fact that for better or for worse, and they can tell you, I mean, the Pence family is kind of the face of this. They've lived here for 40 years. They're still living here. So I can't believe that they would allow something to happen that would endanger our community. And I just feel that at this point in time, they deserve a chance to clean this up. So I would ask to table this.
Any other comments from the council? We also have our attorney here who can speak as well, but does anybody else on council want to?
I would like to say, in response to Colleen, we as council right now, with this resolution, are not doing anything to affect the owners of this property. We're not taking over the job of cleaning up this property. What we're doing is telling the owners of this property that there's a contaminated site there that's been there for a very long time, and there has been no remediation. There has been nothing done to clean it up. We have a vacant building at the gates of our town. So to say that we're burdening the taxpayer is absolutely wrong. What has happened since this process has started, as we have seen a lot of activity from the owners on this property to move to clean it up. And that's exactly what we want done. If they want our help to clean this site up, the Borough of Beach Haven, with their ability to borrow money at a very favorable rate, can assist them financially if they want to, or they can take it all upon themselves. We don't want to clean this site. We want to see it clean. We want to see the building put back into service. We want to see these buyers that are out there thrive as business people in our town. This process that we're in right now is only an oversight process. And we need the oversight to keep the pressure on the developer and the owners to clean the site up. So I don't agree with what you said. I don't think what you said is accurate. I think it's misleading to the public. And I say that respectfully. But we need the oversight. And by passing this resolution tonight, all we're doing is moving the process forward. We're not condemning the property by any stretch of the imagination. This ordinance, this resolution tonight does not condemn the property. It just says that this property is in need of redevelopment. We want to see the building back in service, and we want to see a good tenant in there or another owner in there or whatever. And as far as the contamination is concerned, it is a contaminated site. And I take offense to, I listened to that land use board hearing, and I take offense to the argument that our wells aren't close enough to this site to be affected. Our water pipes are, our sewer pipes are. Our sewer pipes and our water pipes are connected by coupling. Some of them are over 100 years old. We know that we have water infiltration into our water and our sewer system. I don't know about all of you, but I turned my faucet on the other day and there was brown water coming out. All of our sewer material is pumped to the mainland, is treated, and then pumped back into the bay. We have a groundwater contaminated site at the beginning of our town. I know the Pences well. I know Mary. I know Elmer. We're not after the Pences. We want to help them. This designation of an area in need of redevelopment helps them. It gives favorable zoning to their site. The new buyers should be thrilled. So I disagree with you, Colleen. This is not an action against the Pences. This is an action in support of helping that property get cleaned up. It's been 1994, is my understanding.
Well, with all due respect, Mike,
Okay.
I disagree with you.
Okay.
I think the Pences, for whatever, and I hate to keep saying that, it's Beach Haven Auto, but as I said, they've become the public base. But at the end of the day, I think they're well aware at this point in time of what's going on. I think that's been made perfectly clear. I think their lawyer's letter today, which I'm sure we've all read, emphasized that. And I think the buyer should have the right to say if they want to have it, rehab, redevelopment, whatever they feel is appropriate. I just think at this point in time, our objective has been met. We wanted them to take a very active approach. They're doing it. I just don't see now why. And, you say it doesn't cost the taxpayers anything. Well, we have our redevelopment attorneys here. And I know she's a wonderful lady, but I'm sure she's not working for free. So at the end of the day, we are, I just don't think it's necessary. And I think at this point in time, I would like to let's see what happens. They've said they're going to get on it. We can always come after them again. I mean, if they are going to drop the ball, we have the ability to certainly revisit this and lower the boom if necessary. I don't think it's going to be necessary. I hope it isn't. That's where I'm coming from.
I'd like to say something. As a pathologist and an epidemiologist, there is a danger in polluted land, and there has been a huge increase in cancer associated with gas stations throughout the entire country, not just in Beach Haven or along the coastal areas. We are, I think, more vulnerable along the coastal areas. I think many oncologists would tell you that they've seen an increase in cancer in areas like this. So it's a real problem. I see. We're not planning on taking this property by eminent demand. We don't want to do it. The only way we'd do that is if the owners did not remedy the situation. We could also enter into an agreement, a legal agreement, where we would say that we wouldn't even contemplate taking this over within so many years, which would give them plenty of time to begin the cleanup. And also, I've taken some courses on brown ground or whatever they call it, brown soil. And there are grants and money available for cleaning up areas if it's in a town and if you apply for the proper grants. So I don't really think there's anything that can really hurt the families that own this property. I don't think it's going to affect the sale of the property either. I think if the people want it, I mean, they're not going to want a property that is still contaminated, because they might run into a problem down the road where they're going to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars decontaminating it. So I don't really see that it's anything that's going to hurt the owners or the potential buyers. And I wouldn't mind entering into a legal agreement saying that we have no intention of taking this property over unless nothing happened. Or unless they couldn't afford to remediate the property, depending on how much it costs. I would like to see the soil samples. I'd like to see the data from this, which I don't know how long that's going to take to get, but I think that would give us a better insight, and them a better insight in what it's going to cost. They might want to say, hey, can you take over some of the cost of this if we can get grant money, because they'll make more money and after selling it when it's cleaned up. So I just don't see a problem with it. I also like to hear from our attorney, but I don't know if anybody else in council wants to say.
I'd like to say something. And I would love to hear from Emily so she could explain more clearly what the actual situation is here and what we're actually voting on. I want to correct Mike. I mean, I know that the Pences and the Cooks have spent over $300,000, I believe, trying to remediate through the years. And that's a lot of money. However, when we talked before, we had a meeting, and I know that we made it clear that, first of all, let me just back up a little bit. I mean, clearly this property qualifies as a property in need of redevelopment. It meets all the criteria. We're not taking the property. No one wants to take the property. This is really difficult. I would say that, sort of in response to the email we received today, to the best of my knowledge, we haven't had sufficient information yet from their LSRP at this time to warrant a postponement. We made it clear at the meeting when we met with y'all that we all know the DEP is famous for postponing and postponing and postponing. And we made it clear that we weren't, as a council, interested in postponements at this time, just because we wanted to continually move forward and to be able to ensure that it continually moves forward. I think a postponement may not be a good idea. But just after some clarification from our attorney, I would just say that if at any time our LSRP and council feels that you're progressing and doing what needs to be done as much as it needs to be done, then we can always enter into an agreement. So that I don't think that tonight this is, all or nothing written in stone. It's been a really long time, and I think just for the greater good, we just need to move forward. As difficult as a decision for me as that is, I really do believe it's the right decision. So I would love to hear from Ms. Givens, if it's okay with the rest of the council, and no one.
No, that's fine. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Sherry, is this on?
Should be.
All right, good evening. With regard to the designation, what the council has before it this evening is a resolution to designate the property an area in need of redevelopment. You chose to move forward with the condemnation, meaning that at some point in the future, you would have to adopt a redevelopment plan that specifically states that the property would be acquired. And after that, you would then have to go through a process where you'd have the property appraised, and it would be appraised as if it was fully remediated. And you'd get the highest value for that property as if it's completely clean, highest and best use. The borough would then have to deposit that full amount of money into court not half of it, not a deposit, the full amount that the property value is. That decision would not be taken lightly, but it takes a lot of steps. You would have to adopt an ordinance to authorize acquisition. So this is a step to make a declaration based off of the current condition of the property. It is not a step to state that you are going to take the property. The property went through the land use board process. There was a public hearing. Evidence was presented to the land use board, and the land use board voted to recommend that the property be designated. That is what you're doing this evening. This designation does not take effect until the DCA reviews it. Because we are in a sensitive planning area, the DCA has to give approval of the designation. So they have 30 days after, if the resolution is adopted this evening, a certified copy will get sent by your borough administrator to the DCA, and they will evaluate it. And if they approve of the designation, it will become effective. If you don't hear from them within 30 days, it becomes effective. At this point, we did receive a letter from council for the owners of the property that states that they have some data back, and we haven't seen it. And I did confirm that with our LSRP. So the information that exchanged that we're hoping for, that hasn't occurred yet. And I recognize that the data was just received back, and I'm certain that it has to get analyzed before it can be shared. So that's no slight to Mr. None at all. I don't think that he's dragging his feet and getting us information. I recognize that there's time to taking this step has gotten us talking. And if we don't do the designation now, I don't know what that gets us. It just makes us have to wait and see if they do it again. Or are they going to continue to do it again? I do believe it's in the best interest of the borough to adopt the resolution, making the declaration of an area in need of redevelopment. Other options will be available to both this property owner, the current property owner, and a future property owner who may see the benefit of a redevelopment area designation. As Mr. Batista mentioned, if that developer came in with a plan that council thought was wonderful for the borough, there are all other options, zoning options, tax abatement options, other options available because the property was so costly to clean. Those options are available. And without this designation, they are not. Does anybody have any questions?
No. Any questions?
No.
Thank you for
Thank you.
Thank you.
that clarification.
And I understand everything you're saying. And I just, I heard Nancy and Kitty mention, entering an agreement. And I just think that's the way to go at this point in time. Obviously, the others don't. The rehab redevelopment designation may be something they want. I just think we're a little premature here. I just think that we should give them a chance now that we have been actively involved and they have hired all kinds of people. My personal feeling. And I just think we're jumping the gun and not taking the opportunity to give them a chance. I know there's a history, but we're here now, and I think we should move forward at this point.
The one that I don't really understand is why the owners basically feel that this is going to hurt them. I don't understand that. If anything, I think it would help them with this situation.
So I don't know what conversations they've had with their own counsel. I can just, from the perspective of having the ability to market your property, potentially get grant funding, work with the borough for a property that's declared an area in need of redevelopment, those types of things. You can get, there are certain grants that you have certain checkboxes that you have to meet. And a declaration of an area in need of redevelopment for a contaminated property gives you additional points towards your grant application. working with the borough. If the borough was a co-applicant on applications, because it's an area in need of redevelopment, you can enter into an agreement. There's potential for that. I cannot say how much funding is available at this point in time. I'm not aware of that. But it certainly, in my opinion, does not hurt the property owner to have this area be declared an area in need of redevelopment. They're concerned about the condemnation aspect of it. And I know that that is what the issue is. However, at this point in time, the decision was made by council when they referred this to the land use board for condemnation. And it was heard at the land use board. The decision was made that to recommend the designation. And that's what's before you. I think that you need to have the ability to move forward in the event that we're faced with another 10 years to get the property cleaned up. And I mean, no disrespect to anyone, but that's why you started this process, is because the remediation was not occurring at a pace that was necessary for the safety and welfare of the borough. And that's what you're looking at, and that's what you're considering. Again, we would have to adopt a redevelopment plan that specifically states that the property would be acquired. And that's not necessarily through condemnation. You could negotiate a friendly sale, arm's length transaction with the current owners. You could eventually go through eminent domain, but that requires you to pay the property owner fair market value for their property. They will not get less than fair market value. In the event that the property is still contaminated, the amount of money that it would take to fully remediate it would be reserved. So the property owner wouldn't get the full benefit of that, because the borough would use that pot of money to remediate the site. So my recommendation is for the borough to move forward with this, but that is certainly up to council to decide.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on council?
Well, I would like to just say that I agree with you, Colleen, that we want to give the owners of this property every opportunity to clean this site up. We have no intention, I have no intention as a single voter on this board to pursue condemnation. My only interest is in the health and the welfare of our community and to get this site as cleaned up as quickly as possible. I believe that the owners of this property will recognize that partnering with the borough on this matter was a blessing. And so with all that said, I would like to make a motion that we approve 168-2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Batista.
Yes.
Mrs. Ball Miller.
Yes.
Ms. Lambert.
No.
Ms. Snyder.
Yes.
Mayor Davis.
Yes.
I have a bill list this evening in the amount of $3,206,817.90. Have you had a chance to review the bills?
Yes. Anybody have any questions? Is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion, we approve the bills.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Batista.
Yes.
Mrs. Ball Miller.
Yes.
Ms. Lambert.
Yes.
Ms. Snyder.
Yes.
Mayor Davis.
Yes.
We have several items for general discussion regarding proposed ordinances. Jamie, I'm going to lean on you for a handful of these. The first one is a proposal to amend the standards for granting a variance.
So we already solved that problem, right?
Right. So I just wanted to discuss with council.
Pull your mic up a little bit. Thanks.
In 2021, we passed an ordinance because we didn't have an expiration of approval for a land use board decision for granting of variances. So what we have in place is for preliminary plans, they have a 3-year period to seek a building permit. And for a final site plan, they have 2 years to seek a building permit. But my concern was that, is this too long? Because when you receive a building permit, you have 1 year to break ground. And then once you break ground, you have 3 more years to complete the project. So if anyone in here were to get a building permit, you would have 4 years to complete your project. But with a land use board granting of a variance, it gives almost an additional 2 years, which would be 6 years for completion of a project. So I just wanted to discuss with council if you thought that that was too long. I just feel with the continuous increase in development and, changes in council, changes in land use board members, I don't want to see any variances, resolutions, fall into the cracks. So if you think that that is a fair 2 years to seek a building permit, or do you think that that should be decreased to 1 year?
I have no problem with decreasing it. And Jamie, you and I worked on this when it first came out because of the big
Right.
hullabaloo in town where somebody had a 6-year-old building permit and things had changed and everything else, but we didn't have the ability to do anything about it. And, a lot of people in town were very upset. How can you let that happen? Because that was the law. And that's when we changed it. And that's when we also demanded that the builder get the CAFRA permit.
Right.
And I think these changes were for the best. Beach Haven is growing rapidly and a lot of projects going on, and they can't be lingering. I think everything should be done in a very timely manner.
I just feel that as I've been a land use board member, and when this ordinance, when we passed this 2 years ago, 3 years and 2 years seemed appropriate. But now that I've been on there, once you come to the land use board and you have your variances, you should be seeking a building permit and moving forward with your project. You shouldn't be stalling the project. You should be ready to go. Just like any of us that were seeking a building permit, we're ready to build. We have our ducks in a row. So I think that we should be, decreasing this by a year. So these resolutions are moving forward and they're not delayed.
I guess, 2 years doesn't seem terrible to me. But is there something that could slow somebody down, like trying to find a contractor, that sort of thing? There's so many issues. I know when I had to renovate my house after the fire, it took longer than I thought it would take. It was slow and it was frustrating and I wanted to move it forward, but I just don't know if I think a year is enough time. And I don't know that much about building.
Yeah,
so-
right now you have 2 years from a land use board decision to seek a building permit.
To get the actual permit.
And then once you get the building permit, you're like everybody else.
But to get the building permit, don't you need a contractor that helps you with all that stuff? And that's where I'm a little confused.
So in other words, if I get an approval from land use board and I own the home and I want to sell it, it doesn't sell right away, it could be 2 years before I potentially sell my property. But that permit, does it follow the property?
Does a resolution follow the property? Yes.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah.
that has happened.
Yeah,
So
I'm sure it
like, and
has.
you're going to sell it and you're advertising, well, I have a building permit to move forward with this.
Yeah, if council's fine
Right.
with the 2 years, that's fine. I just wanted to.
Yeah, I'd like to just, heard about it today and I'd like to look into it a little more before I
It's just,
decide.
I don't know enough about
Seems
building.
like a good idea, but I'd just like to look into it a little
Yeah.
bit to double check.
This is just a
Yeah, we're
preliminary.
just discussing.
Right.
Preliminary discussion to see if the idea
It's
is
worth looking
understood,
into.
because at this point, if we're all interested in knowing more, we're going to work on a draft. You'll have to review the
I would
draft
like
and
to
then
look into it,
introduce it, so there's still a process.
Yep. I think it's a good idea to look into it.
The next one entails site plan review.
Okay, let me get this one up. So currently we have a architectural advisory committee, and what this committee does is when a new developer comes in town that wants to do some type of development of a property in the business district or the marine commercial district, we have a group of 5 people that include architects, engineers, and a couple other members of the community that looks at the site plan, gives recommendations on architectural style, density, building scale, really kind of keeping with the small town feel that we have in the business district and the marine commercial district. But really, it's just an advisory committee. And what we're seeing is some, applicants that are seeking a permit or going to the land use board don't want to take advantage of this committee. They just want to not use the committee and just, go right to the land use board And what I would like to see is to give this, our architectural advisory committee a little bit more teeth in where they would have to have a meeting with, the developers would have to have a meeting with the architectural advisory committee. They can't deny the meeting. And then that would be part of the, our engineer's letter that would be submitted to the land use board. Again, it doesn't have any permanent effect on the applicant, but it does give recommendations, again, on the building scale, color, density. We actually have a whole building guideline that we've been working on and should have the final draft out by September. We're just adding some pictures. So the Architecture Advisory Committee does have a guideline. It's about 40 pages long that they go through with a potential applicant. So I would like to see this as part of the site plan review, that the applicant, whether they're applying for a building permit or a variance, that they would have to meet with the Architectural Advisory Committee.
My comment on that, I have no problems with that, but I'd like to have the site plan done first and read that before. In other words, you said it's about ready to be done in September. The guidelines for the site plan. So I think I think that's putting the, you don't want to put the cart.
No, the AAC does use the guidelines. They have the.
But wouldn't it be nice to have them approved by council? I guess they have to be approved, and then the people that want to do this can have something in their hands to look at.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and they do see it. We do share.
But once you have that done, then I don't see any problem with demanding that if you're going to build in those areas, that you have to meet with this committee.
So guidelines complete, and then.
Yeah, once the guidelines are complete.
That's fair.
I agree with that. I think it's important.
Okay.
I think we can all attest driving downtown down Bay Avenue. Some places look great and some places don't. And I think consistency and continuity and some guidelines and guidance is a great idea. I think it requires the land use to really buy into it, and hopefully they will, and to respect the advice that the Architectural Advisory Commission gives. I'd like to see you're trying to shorten?
Yes.
Yeah, that's really important. I think it's
Yeah.
too long, too wordy, hard to read.
Right.
It's not as user friendly. I also think that the AAC has to be open and amenable to speaking with anyone and everyone about any project and every project that comes in front of them.
Right.
Because you hear, one person came and they wouldn't speak to them. Whether that's true or not, I do not know, but I don't think anybody ever wants to hear that, and nor should it ever be the case. So I think it's a great idea, and I think it's important for the town and our Main Street to improve the way it looks into the future.
No, I just, I discussed this with Jamie, and I said, we set up the AAC. They specifically didn't want teeth. But if this is something you said now that they are on board with, then I don't see any harm in it.
Yeah, it's still completely advisory. It's just.
Yeah, it can't be, it's not
Well,
by
it took a
law,
while for
it's
each
simply
package.
advisory, but it's a different situation. Well, we have a, federal case to back us up. They can't, and they won't. It's impossible. But, if the land use is, if I think that the way for this to work is if there's respect for each other, and then if you go to the AAC before you apply for a variance, and then the land use, the applicant takes the advice or not. And if, maybe the land use would be more favorable on your application if you've followed some of the advice of the AAC, or, that's just kind of how it kind of needs to work, and hopefully it will.
Okay. Michael, anything from you on that?
I think the Architectural Review Board is a very important part of the development process. I agree with what you're trying to do, Jamie. Site plan review, I think you're on target with that as well. So as this develops, I'd like to see some script and so forth, but I'm in favor of it.
Okay, great.
Right.
The next proposal, there's been a request that the municipal parking lots on Center Street Block 149 and Block 150 located between Bay Avenue and Delaware Avenue, that during the daytime, a 3-hour limit be placed on parking in those areas. You wanted to discuss the pros and cons of that suggestion?
I think it's a good idea, but Chief, maybe you can help out here. Is that going to be a pain to enforce? I mean, I know people go and park overnight and just leave their cars there. So I think this is worth pursuing, but I just, is it going to be realistic to enforce it?
The 3 hours, from what I understand, Colleen, would only be during the daytime hours, that there
Right.
would not be any restriction for people parking there overnight.
No, but I mean, people who live in the area
Right.
park there.
Yes. permanently.
So that's why, and I think, like I said, I think it's good. I think the businesses in the area can use the spaces, but, from a police perspective,
We'll treat it like any other area that we have a time limit. If we get a complaint, we'll go over, document that the car is there. And then we'll come back later and check to see if it's still there. I can't guarantee that the officers are going to continuously be able to stop in depending on what's going on in town that day, but it could be a start to at least take care of part of the problem. I know some of the condos were there next door to that, park there and leave them there all week. And they end up not moving for a week. So that does become an issue.
so, but I mean, basically you're saying it would be more of a reactive thing.
Yeah, we can react to a call if we get a call that,
But you're
cars
not going
parked there,
to-
but I can't guarantee that we would always be able to, it's not an easy parking lot to patrol. Because
Extra
it's hard to
tires,
get
yeah, I
in and
gotcha.
out.
Yeah.
But, when an officer's free in a day, they can drive by, document which cars are there and then, but again, that's kind of taking a list. If somebody notices that a car's been parked there for, a day, or we can always start, deal with the problems.
Okay. No, I mean, I like the idea. I'm just wondering what it's going to do, for your department.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
It's interesting because, we've had these conversations in the past, particularly when we didn't allow overnight parking in those lots. But from what I remember, because there is some ordinance somewhere that says even on Bay Avenue, there's a limit to how long a car can park.
Everywhere in town, I believe the limit is, I think it's 7 days.
Is that what it is?
Is that what it is?
There's a limit.
Oh, he left.
Yeah.
I believe it's 7 days.
Uh-huh.
So if a car is parked in the same spot for 7 days, we document that it's there, and if it's still there, we usually try to notify the owner of the vehicle and see if there was a problem. Get them to move it periodically.
I mean, like Kapler's has a spot that says 1 hour parking, but technically, I mean, there's a handicap spot, but next to it is a 1 hour parking lot. And that we have initiated parking for pickup, which is a short-term parking. I have no problems with this. I wouldn't, the police don't have the time to put those lines on the tires.
We're not
and go
allowed to do
back and
that
check.
anymore.
You don't have
Yeah.
time to do that. But if somebody does complain and say, hey, this car's been here for 2 days in this lot, they haven't moved.
It's the
Yeah.
same thing with the 45-minute spots that we
Yeah.
have for curbside pickup. We don't go by and address, keep a list of which ones parked there at which time. But if we get a call from one of the business owners who says one of our spots that's for curbside pickup, somebody's been parked there since 9 o'clock this morning, it's now noon.
I mean, if we want to
We try
get
to figure out
serious about,
We can, address
really
that.
checking cars to make sure they're only there for a certain time, then we should put in paid parking. But we don't have that. But I mean, as long as it isn't, I mean, people don't keep track of 3 hours, and they might be 3.5 hours or 4 hours. But if somebody complained and you guys came and saw that the car was there for a long time, I have no problems with that. But I just feel that if you're going to have 3 hour parking in one spot, there's a lot of places in town where it probably should be as well. That's my feeling, but I don't really care one way or the other. But whatever, as long as it doesn't take all the cops off the street worrying about that kind of stuff.
Again, we would address complaints. It would be difficult for us to go and, every hour, every 3 hours,
Right.
check to see if the same
Don't have
cars
the
are parked in
time.
those spots. That would be somewhat difficult to keep track of.
Someone could, if I'm parked there and I want, and it's 3 hours, let's just say, I could move my car right next to the spot and it does, then
You
it's.
could back, I guess,
Starts over.
technically you back it up and pull it back into the same spot and you've moved it. It's,
But how would you know? I mean, really.
we have that problem in town and other places when people have their cars parked in front of neighbors' houses and they'll park, move it 2 inches and say the vehicle's been moved.
I hate it when people park in front of my house.
Are you
I
in
know, that's
favor of,
ridiculous.
are you in favor of us looking into this, drafting something?
Sure, I don't understand why we're just looking into one space, but yeah.
Okay, well, we'll do some more research
Yep.
then. And then the fourth item, while you're still standing there, is the letter that we received from the county and the ordinance that was submitted to the county from Long Beach Township. If you could talk to the council about that.
We received a letter from Ocean County in reference to lowering the speed limit on Beach Avenue to 20 miles an hour. I received a phone call from Long Beach Township. They have moved forward and sent the county their ordinance lowering the speed limit on their back roads to 20 miles an hour. And I think this would be the time, it's not 15, but it's 5 mile an hour slower, is 5 mile an hour slower. And we have had some issues up there this year and it takes an extra, for the whole town, it'll take you an extra 30 seconds to get through town.
We talked about this before. I think we'd be dumb not to just do what the township.
It's
did.
difficult to get up to 25 miles an hour on Beach and Atlantic Avenue, especially in the morning. And the people that do get up to that speed, it seems like they're going way too fast for all the pedestrians and bicyclists and little kids that are up there.
Will
So
this be year round?
I believe it. I don't know.
We
if it
went
was
through this
made
last
year-round by the
time
state
and
county.
they wouldn't do it
Yes.
for part of the time. It
Yeah,
had
so
to
it would be a
year-round.
year-round 20 mile an
I
hour
remember
speed
that
limit
distinct-
for
Yeah.
Beach and Atlantic Ave.
We've gone back and forth about this and about lowering the speed limit. And I just don't think it's necessary in Beach Haven. We have sidewalks all along Beach Avenue from 12th Street all the way down. We have sidewalks. Township chose not to go that route. And on Atlantic, we have a lot of sidewalks too. When you build a new house, you have to put in a curb and sidewalk. We have that.
Ocean County did the, not to know, I'm sorry, but Ocean County did the speed survey, speed study, and the study showed that cars are going much higher than 25 miles an hour
From
on Beach
on
Avenue.
Beach
On
Avenue.
Beach Avenue.
In
yeah.
Beach
And so
Haven,
they-
because
yeah,
your
they rec-
study was
What
less.
month did they do
They
that?
submitted it to you, right?
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Did they submit it to you?
I'm sorry.
Did
the
they
letter?
submit that speed study to you, the letter?
I don't think I have the actual data, but I received the
The
letter.
letter saying that
Mhm.
the data shows that it was recommended to go to 20.
Yes.
So I'll find it
Yeah,
and
find it,
and give it to
'cause
you, but
It's impossible to go above
Maybe
25
that
in
was in
township.
January.
There's a million people on the roads because they don't have any sidewalks.
5 mile,
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, it's 5 miles an hour isn't going to make a difference in your travel time. And it could make a difference in somebody getting hit by a vehicle.
But remember, on the off season and it floods, that's what we travel.
Yeah.
So, a lot of us we don't work on the island. We're commuters and most of our borough employees actually work off the island as well. So I just think I don't really think it's necessary. That's
It
how I
said
feel.
2 speed studies were conducted along Beach Avenue. The first was from June 20th, 2020 to June 26th, 2020 between Taylor Avenue and 7th Street. The second was from June 20th, 2020 to June 26th, 2020 between 4th Street and 2nd Street. Our speed study and analysis included field measurement of vehicle speeds, review of 85th percentile and average speeds, and review of the number of vehicles exceeding the speed limit by 5 to 10 miles per hour. We utilized the Federal Highway Administration Speed Management Safety Methodology to determine the recommended speed based on various factors. The existing speed limit on County Road number 43 is 25. The collected data supports lowering the speed limit to 20 miles per hour.
From 2020,
That was when the speed studies were, yes.
3 years ago.
They provided us the letter for the speed study in December of 22, and we didn't do anything with it because we had discussions about it, and now it's come up again because the county has jumped on it.
Right, but remember in June of 2020, there wasn't nearly as many people that were here. We weren't even sure if we could have a season at the end of the June. So I could believe that there were people speeding on the back roads because there wasn't anybody here. It was kind of like an off-season event. So I don't even think that, I think the new traffic study would have to be done in order to determine that. That's just how
The
I.
township is passing their they passed their
Well, they have
ordinance. I mean, it would
15 on it.
be,
Yeah, they have 15 on Atlantic and no sidewalks.
I believe they're going to 20 for everything.
They're going back up to 20.
I believe it's going to be 20 miles an hour from what I
don't think you can
understand.
Keep it at 15. That was for COVID, from what I.
What about Ship Bottom?
I don't know about Ship Bottom.
They're.
I don't know if they're
main
doing the
drag
same
is
thing. This seems
slower.
like it's, all the back roads, but
They don't have any back roads.
it's the council's decision. I just,
On the
The
Bay
Bayside.
side is higher than.
I know.
It's higher than the boulevard.
I know, I go
I
faster.
know,
on
we all go
that.
that way. I just don't think it's necessary at this time.
I just see why not at the township? I mean, everybody's gonna go faster than the speed limit anyway. It's sort of like selective enforcement.
if,
It's like the curfew.
it's the same thing. If a car's going a couple miles over the speed limit, generally that's not the vehicle you're looking for. You're looking for the one that's going 10 miles over the speed limit. So
Right.
I'm not saying that we're not enforcing it because that's,
No, I know. I shouldn't say that. I should keep my mouth shut.
I know, when we had this discussion before, I was not, excuse me, I'm sorry, not in favor of it. But my concern now is if they're coming south and they're coming down Beach and they're doing 20, I don't want to see them gunning through Beach Haven at this point because that's what's going to happen. They're going to say 25 and take off. So it doesn't thrill me, but I think because Long Beach Township did it, then we should probably join them.
there is a lot of pedestrian traffic on the back roads and now between Second and Third on Beach Avenue, there's a business back there. And that draws a lot of people in. It's a coffee shop. So there is a large crowd back there too. So 5 mile an hour could make a difference.
So what about the electric bikes that go 20 miles per hour? Are you going to ticket them now?
We address what we can address.
You can't address them, I
We
know.
can, I mean, if they're speeding, we can address them, but it's a matter of if we can get them. We're also not going to do 60 to get to a car on the back road. So
Are we entertaining this?
I don't think it's.
I'm in favor of it.
Thanks, chief.
I'm in favor too. I don't see any problem with it.
That's all we have for general discussion, Nance.
Yep.
You can open for public.
So now we're opening the floor to public discussion and public comment. Anybody?
Can I just ask a question quickly before we open it up? I wanted to just read a little bit about the park committee.
Sure.
Should I do that now or? it's
Sure, you
public?
can, whenever.
Okay, so I just wanted to let everyone know that, well, I'm happy to report that a Beach Haven Parks Committee has been established. This committee is comprised of a diverse group of Beach Haven residents with a vested interest in our community and all of whom bring a certain skill set to the group, to the committee. The mission statement for this is to preserve Beach Haven parks and recreational settings, making them safe, attractive, active places for all ages that most benefit the Beach Haven community, and valuing the need to preserve and sustain our coastal environment and taking into consideration local neighbors' input and fiscal responsibility. We are in the process of gathering data on all of our parks and plan to survey residents, visitors, and the business community to identify the needs and to be able to prioritize these needs. We will assess how all of our parks are currently being utilized. We promise to develop and initiate a communications plan to continually inform council and the public of the Parks Committee activity. Additionally, either Colleen or myself, we're both on the committee, will report on those activities monthly at a council meeting. Again, it's a work in progress. It just started, but we wanted to just make sure that everyone is aware of it. So it's just out in the open. Currently, we have 12 members and I think I'm pretty sure we're going to have one more by the next meeting. So I think it's a great thing. I think it's so iron out some kinks, but if you can serve on a committee with 13 people, I mean, it's not easy, but it'll be fun and hopefully we'll make a difference and do some good in the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm opening the floor to public comments. Please keep your comments at 3 minutes and state your name and address when you get to the microphone. And you're dying to speak, so come on up. Yes, I know you're not dying to speak.
James Vogel, 528 Dock Road. We're going to refer to 168 again. First of all, I heard some health concerns. I want to know how much health concern there is for the old incinerator property, which is adjacent to this, to the west. Has that been checked for contaminants? But we'll let that go for now. We left the land use board meeting with certain assurances that when this was presented to the Borough Council, the word condemnation would be removed. It would be left as a redevelopment zone. And here we are with condemnation in there, and I don't see why the owners would not have concerns with that when they were assured that they would be taken out. This is sad. The Pences have both served the borough of Beach Haven for many, many decades. They are honorable people. They have taken steps for remediation. Ms. Lambert, I appreciate your concerns. The rest of you, I find it shameful that you take this action. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. And I'll take fault in saying that I would take the word condemnation out. I didn't because I really couldn't. It's based on any kind of redevelopment. One has to say that. If we could take the word out, I'd take it out. But I don't think I can I, Emily?
Well, you've already.
Well, we already passed the rest. But I mean, even before that, because I talked to.
The land use board made a recommendation.
Right.
Council did not accept that recommendation. That's in the resolution. So it's clear in the resolution that they made a recommendation. Council did not accept that recommendation and continued with the condemnation designation.
All right. Anybody else? Yes.
Coincidentally, I think the last time I was standing up here was when they put the roller rink down at Nelson Avenue. Mary Lee Pence, 314 Bradley Avenue, Rockville, Maryland. I am the youngest daughter of Elmer and Mary Pence. And on behalf of my family and Beach Haven Auto, I'd like to read something. Unfortunately, our attorney, Kathy Ward, wasn't able to be here this evening on short notice, but this is the letter that was sent last night to the Borough Council. Council members, on behalf of our client, Beach Haven Automotive, we're writing to you formally to request a delay in discussion of the subject resolution 168-2023, currently listed on the July 27, 2023 Borough of Beach Haven Council meeting agenda. The borough's rush to place the property under the threat of condemnation, given the facts, is troublesome and will affect the marketability and potentially therefore the developability of the site, which otherwise is currently on track, as there is a potential buyer who has been interested in the site for many months. There is no harm to the borough or its residents in taking more time to understand the status of the site. It is important to note that data from investigations, which was received by our consultant as recently as July 25, continues to show that groundwater impacts have not migrated beyond the boundary of the groundwater classification exception area for the site. As the borough knows, a CEA is approved by the NJDEP and is only established after we have proven that there are no receptors, such as wells, which could be affected by that contamination. The remaining work necessary to complete the site remediation continues with a schedule and with money posted with NJDEP to guarantee completion. In the next few weeks, we will be identifying additional investigation needs as well as the design of the overall remedy for the site. Given the above, we respectfully request that the borough allow for additional time for this data evaluation to be finalized prior to any additional discussion of a resolution, which will have a very significant impact on our client. As promised during the Land Use Board meeting on July 10th, 2023, we will continue to transparently communicate the results of the most recent data along with the next steps in our plan in a timely manner. We appreciate your consideration of this request. Please let me know if you have any questions. Sincerely yours, Catherine M. Ward. I just want to say something on behalf of our family. This has been a really difficult situation. And I think my parents have lived here a really long time. I just think there's been a complete lack of communication regarding this, and we're very open to continuing to work with the town to address any concerns you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Carol Weissman, 310 Southwest Avenue. Just two questions. One, regarding the rescinding or the withdrawal, if you will, of the resolution for the mooring of the boats. Part of that discussion was about that they're going to do or are in the process doing kind of an historical analysis, and then maybe looking at acquiring funding for development there. Could you just share with us kind of what is happening there? I'd love to hear about that. And my second question is really kind of very mundane, but regarding the ordinance where you can't have anything but a beach umbrella. I just kind of wonder what is happening. I know I go to the beach. I know that sounds silly. Everybody probably laughs, but I go, and it seems like on the weekends, there's no tents, there's no anything. During the week, you've got the sail things up. You've got some people with the, cabana type things. And I'm wondering, are you kind of looking at that and kind of evaluating whether or not it's only going to be umbrellas, or whether a cabana, but the small cabanas that have the little strips with the hold by the sand could be, people are now going, of course, with 5 people and one umbrella for each one and clustering them all together to try to make it more like a tent. But kind of, what's happening. And I don't want to put any more work on the lifeguards to enforce. I'd rather have them watching people in the water. But any analysis or discussion going on about that whole thing? Appreciate it.
This forum really isn't to have a, conversation back and forth.
Okay.
But
No,
if you want
right.
to come up after the meeting,
It was just 2 questions.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going
Or
to sit down and
give us a
if you want to
call or
answer
send
them.
us an email.
Okay, I can do that. And, okay.
Thank you. Okay. We've got somebody already there.
Oh, someone else.
That's all right.
Cookie
for it.
Messick, Virginia, 19 6th Street, Beach Haven. I'm still confused about the condemnation. Is there no way that word cannot be there? That it doesn't say condemnation? Because when you discussed it, you didn't say condemnation. And then it says condemnation in the written part of what you're passing.
Well, again, this isn't given, but basically we designate it as a redevelopment area because of condemnation. It doesn't mean that we're in any way taking the property via eminent domain or anything like that. It does not mean that, just to make sure you know.
Right, it just does publicly when someone sees condemnation.
I know
They're
it sounds
automatically
worse than
making it
is.
a bad
Emily,
thing.
maybe after
You
the
know,
meeting, we'll talk
condemnation
about it.
to me is
I think
condemnation.
Emily would like to speak on this,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that's okay with the
Thank
rest of
you.
council.
The utilization, when Mrs. Mason read the title, she read that it was a condemnation redevelopment area. So that was part of the discussion. That was part of what was being introduced. And that was what Ms. Lambert asked to table, that resolution that did in fact state condemnation redevelopment area. If the council had wanted to adjust that designation, then certainly they could have, but that was not what the intent of the designation was initially.
Right.
The referral was made as a condemnation redevelopment area to the land use board. And the council feels strongly, obviously, because you voted in favor of it, to maintain that as part of the designation.
And again, there are a number of steps that have to be taken in the event that that were going to be contemplated by council.
Great.
Hope that helps.
Jody Matthews, Oceanport, New Jersey. She just said that they felt strongly about the condemnation word, which obviously I work in commercial real estate. That really hurts you in trying to sell it, which you all said you're supportive of them doing. Several of you, and I'm sure you can check your record, said you'd be okay with removing condemnation, yet you never actually discussed removing condemnation. You just forced it through.
All right.
I have someone on
who's
Zoom.
next? What?
I have someone on Zoom.
Oh, we have someone on Zoom. Great. Okay.
Barb Kona.
Thanks, Sherry. I was just wondering if council could explain how they select committee members for things like the Architectural Review Committee or the Parks Committee, because there never seems to be a posting for people who would like to join these committees, and it seems to be a lot of the same people. So I'm wondering if you could explain that.
Barb, could you just state your address for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. 100 Northwest Avenue.
Why don't you call Kitty or myself and we'll try to explain it to you. I mean, we just don't have time to answer every question, and that's not the purpose of this discussion time. So give one of us a call. Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Thanks, Barb.
Anybody else like to come forward?
I'm Margie Carnival. I live on 1900 West Avenue. I've been in this town a long time. And what you're doing to that family is horrible. First of all,
horrible?
What you're doing to the Pence family. You have someone who is a veteran, someone who has done more than enough for our town with Mary. She was on our Beach Haven Board of Education. She ran our PTA. She worked for your borough for years. Thank you, Colleen. I just don't get it. Why can't you revote and get that word out?
Can we, Emily? Can we get that word out? Is there any way to get that word out of that resolution? I mean, I was told no. I mean, it's just a redevelopment in an area.
So I'd like to make a
that need to be
suggestion. I'd like to
redeveloped.
make a suggestion. We're going to go into closed session after this. And I would like to get some more clarification on this and to be absolutely sure that what we did, that to see what it would mean if we remove that word, and then I don't know how, well, whatever we're advised and whatever we are told, whether council wants to bring it back for another vote. I hear what you're saying. Believe me when I tell you, I hear what you're saying. I
mean,
know.
look at these people. They've done everything for our town. You
Margie,
can
I know that.
imagine.
And this is, you know, listen, I know, and this public comment, you know, it is supposed to be a certain way, a certain format, but everyone knows. I mean, it's just a situation, unfortunately, that, I mean, I wouldn't mind having the word removed. I think that the word needs to be there for a certain reason. And I just want to make sure, let's revisit it. Let's talk about it and see what we can do about removing that word. If
I
we
would
can
appreciate
remove
it.
that word.
Thanks,
And if
Kitty.
it would still work. And believe me, I don't want to be doing any of this.
Okay.
I would even like to add to that. I mean, it's not just the condemnation. I just want to sit down and find out who the Pence's attorney or Beach Haven Auto, I don't mean to keep saying, is rehab redevelopment, you know, all of it, the whole package. I think we should take a good look at this again.
Okay, well,
We've been, believe me, we know, we just meeting tonight, we just felt like doing it. Of course, we've met with them and this is public comment and this is inappropriate. So we're
Please
going to
don't yell
continue
from the
on with
audience.
public comment.
Okay,
Please don't yell from the audience.
okay, thank you.
I feel foolish coming up to discuss my problem, but this is important to me. My name is Regina Blake. I live at 1516 South Bay Avenue on the corner of Iroquois. And I'm addressing two items. One being the unsafe access to the beach on Iroquois Avenue. And the other the bench at the beach, which I purchased many years ago. I did purchase that beach in memory of my husband, and it was to be a resting place for me and others to sit and ponder, as its message says, to put your sandals on and take a few seconds before walking home, or to sit with a few friends and chat. The bench has now been moved by someone for the convenience of putting the bikes closer to the entrance. In doing so, they have removed the ability of individuals like me to access the beach at all. As you can see, and I'll show you these photos, there's only 5 photos on my iPad when I'm finished with this. But as you'll be able to see, there's so many bikes there. The owner of the house on the beach comes here every weekend to remove bikes from her driveway so her renters can pull her cars in. One day, 31 bikes. Now, this is one street on Iroquois Avenue. It's a hazardous condition, and it's the only street that has that problem because my kids have driven and walked up the other avenues, and there's no problem on the other streets. But someone's going to get hurt eventually, and the town is going to be held responsible for it. I'm suggesting a sign limiting the number of bikes. I don't know how you're going to be able to do that, and allowing easy access to the ramp to enter and exit the beach because it's not possible now. What I want to know is who is responsible for placing the bench next to the ramp and ensuring it will not be removed again. Is there any way that it can be anchored down so that folks like me can continue to enjoy it? Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you can find a solution for me respectfully.
Thank you. We'll definitely look into this.
Do you want to see the picture?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Regina.
We'll definitely look into this. Sherry has your
Regina
address.
Blake.
Well, that's one.
We have a bench on our street and it's anchored, so I don't know if that's an issue.
Okay, so this is what the bench looked like when we put it in. And when we were able to.
Okay.
This is early in the morning.
Okay.
Okay. This is as the day goes on. This is what it looks like from noon until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You can't even, I mean, the bench was moved from where it was to the side. And this is another picture of it. But my family go and clean the brush off and make sure that it's built, but I can't get up there.
We'll look, I'll go personally look at it. And I'll send the public works people to look at it. I know how you feel. I have a bench I dedicated on my street, and we'll deal with this.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Regina.
Jen Tomlinson, 306 South Bay Ave. So it's not on the agenda and there aren't agendas in the back. So could you repeat, please, what was approved with Pillar Designs? And it's not on the online agenda.
Authorizing award of a professional service contract with Pillar Design Studios LLC for planning, design of the Beach Haven Skate Park. And this was added at the last minute.
And that's not, it's just looking at another spot, which is on Taylor Avenue. It's not great in Gravesend Zone. It's just looking at it to see if a skateboard park would work.
It just, I mean, transparency, the Parks Committee met yesterday. The Parks Committee toured every park. The Park Committee spent well over an hour discussing everything. And then something that's not on the agenda and there aren't agendas in the back, like where is the transparency or trust?
Well, all the agendas were taken. I did have 25. They were all taken. And we do have the ability to add things. So this was added to the consent.
Anybody else?
Hi, Eileen Boker, 5404 South Long Beach Boulevard, Holgate. I'm here on behalf of 401 Center Street LLC Holiday Snack Bar. Good evening. Thank you for those of you that have taken the time to meet with us in regards to the Holiday Snack Bar. I'm here again today for the record. Mr. Rabin and Mr. Dowell had notified me that Mr. Padula had indicated that you as a council would like to see this settled, and so would we. I'm looking forward to put it in the past. According to the press release, this began with a complaint of a neighbor. As you know, we have been in front of the land use board twice at the request of the borough. The neighbor wanted a buffer. We gave them a buffer. We moved all the tables to the south and the east side of the building away from their home to reduce the noise that they may be affected by. They were concerned about the bikes that were so close to their property. We added a second bike rack away from their property. We open at 8 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. And if it helps, we will hold seating outside off until 9 a.m. or we'll wait until 9 a.m. to open. The outside lights are now in place on a timer that turns off at 10 p.m. And yet they are necessary for the bathrooms while we're open during the dusk and the late early evening hours. Borough of Beach Haven Ordinance 2022-01C 137-3 expanded outdoor dining areas. The total amount of seats available to patrons shall not exceed the permitted occupancy of the establishment. I'm going to read that twice. The total amount of seats available to the patrons shall not exceed the permitted occupancy of the establishment. 71 is the permitted occupancy of the establishment at 401 Center Street as determined by the fire marshal. We have had and currently have 10 tables outside with a total of a seat count of 40 to 48, depending on what we put at the picnic tables. There were 8 picnic tables when we purchased. There are now only 4 picnic tables. So we had reduced the seats. 48 is 67% of the allowable seats. And you actually could allow more, but we are meeting the financial obligations with what we have. Why do we need those seats? Each seat grosses approximately $12,000 a season. Each seat affords and provides employment of each of the amazing young adults that call themselves staff. We are very mindful of the traditions and pricing at the Holiday Snack Bar. These seats enable us to offer reasonable food prices, and these seats have received absolutely 0 complaints in the last 3 years since we have owned it, other than the fact that they were in the buffer. I am here today as a good neighbor and in good faith to work with the council. God willing, I am trusting this council to do not only what is fair and just, but what is right. I'll never be able to thank each of you enough for your support and guidance during this difficult past year. They say that standing for what is right means sometimes standing alone, but as the Holiday Snack Bar stands, dozens, then hundreds, now thousands have stood with us. Some would say the Holiday Snack Bar is Beach Haven, and as such, Beach Haven is the Holiday Snack Bar. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your effort. Long live the Lady Lord Baltimore.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Shannon Herkner, 407 Center Street. This is all so simple. It's so simple. The Holiday is a luncheonette, a snack bar, and a non-conforming residential zone. A residential zone. The Land Use Board denied the request for a D variance. They've been sued by the borough, and for the record, we are not suing them. The borough is. It's been in litigation for almost 14 months. Eileen has said in the past at the council meeting that it didn't start with us, that there were problems before with the borough. And they to this day post on Facebook that they're going to continue to operate as is. They don't care. Eileen did her due diligence. She knew exactly what she was purchasing, a snack bar in a residential zone with limited seating. They do not comply. They do not respect the taxpayers or this town. The correspondence between the borough attorney and the Bokers is public record. Anyone can request this and read through all of the exhibits in the correspondence. They are not the victims. Games and benches and the ring tosses are still in our buffer zone. Our buffer zone is still not being respected. They seat upwards of 10 people at their picnic tables. They say they seat 6. They pull seats around and there's 10. Please limit their outdoor seating again and see if they comply. Don't just give them 40. Don't settle on that, because that will soon become 50 or that will soon become 60. You cannot trust them. They do not comply. Enough is enough. And people know no one is just trying to shut down the holiday snack bar. That's just another bully tactic. Please do what we elected you to do. Please listen to your attorney. He's done everything he can to help enforce them. And they were only granted 36 seats because that was during COVID. They were given 24 seats in 2013. And our planner reiterated a table with an umbrella needs a 6-foot perimeter. You can't do that with 10 tables. Keep it at 24 seats. And if this was happening in New York City or where else, how long would this last? They either need to comply or the Bokers need to be shut down. Don't just settle with them and give them all the seats they want. Keep in mind, they're still not complying. They're still not respecting our buffer zone. We've gone to them. We asked them before this all happened. It's just as frustrating for us as it is for everyone else. Please, it's simple. Just, they don't comply.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else?
Hi, Theodora Lambert, 516 North Atlantic Avenue. Something on the speed limit. I'm sure the chief has much more information than I have, but NJ DOT, the lowest speed limit you can have is 25. Maybe it's different on county roads. I don't know, just something to look into. And as far as 168, it's just a real shame that public comment was not open before you forced through the condemnation. Because when everybody left that land use board meeting, land use board recommended taking out condemnation. I would have loved to remind you of that that's what they passed, rehab redevelopment, not condemnation. The family said they do not want it. The realtor said it hurts the property. You have to ask yourself, who is benefiting from this? Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy, I have someone on Zoom.
Oh, yeah. Oh, please, go ahead.
Ann Fullerton.
Hi, my name is Ann Fullerton. Address is 6829 Tammy Court, Bethesda, Maryland. I am the oldest daughter of Elmer and Mary Pence, so I'm Mary Lee's sister. Just want to reiterate that, yes, we would respectfully ask for the borough to consider removing the word condemnation. That to us, that would hinder the sale process, which would move this on to a property that would be beneficial to the town, which is, I know what you want. I was part of the initial meeting between Beach Haven Auto and the borough. To my knowledge, there was one. We shared as much information as we could at the time. I know that the town's LSRP has requested some information from Beach Haven Auto's LSRP. He has responded in a timely manner. We look forward to continuing to work with the town, but really very much request that you remove the condemnation from the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, Mayor. Bill Hudson, Lurie's Island Inn Motel, Beach Haven Inlet, Holgate. One of the reasons I'm here, Mayor, is this is a bigger issue than this complaint. We're missing 800 seats for patrons to go out and eat dinner. We're missing Fred's Diner. We're missing Kubel 2. We're missing where they just put up in Long Beach Township a candy store. And we're missing Dom's Diner. We're missing a whole lot of seats. This is really simple, like she says, okay? The outdoor seating ordinance says quite plainly, 137.3, expanded outdoor dining areas. The total amount of seats available to patrons shall not exceed the permitted occupants of the establishment. Fire marshal says they're allowed 71. 71 is allowed outside. 71. as per your ordinance. 137.3, I'll say it again. The total amount of seats available to patrons shall not exceed the permitted occupancy of the establishment. Fire marshal says it's 71.
That's inside and outside. Well, I have to
Okay,
look at that.
so they're allowed by your ordinance 71 seats outside. They're only asking for 48. Okay, and we're trying to cut down on this 800 problem because at my motel, one of the reasons I'm here is people come back and complain. We can't find a restaurant that can get us in a timely manner. We can't get seats at some restaurants that are sold out for the whole season in their dining area. And then when we get in the restaurant, it's a long time to get served. You know, we've got a serious problem feeding people that are tourists for our livelihood of our businesses. And this is real simple. They're allowed 71 seats outside and they're only asking for 48. The next thing, when this complaint was filed by the Herkners, they said that they reside in Beach Haven. I'm going to read the definition of reside: to dwell permanently and continually occupy a dwelling place. They don't live there. They live in Haddonfield. Their kids go to school in Haddonfield. Their tax bill goes to Haddonfield. They don't reside in Beach Haven. So their whole complaint was based on a lie. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just for the record, we've never said that we were
You have to state
residing.
your name and
Shannon
address
Herkner, 407 Center Street. I keep hearing this on Facebook and everywhere else. We never said we resided in Haddonfield. We said we had a home in Beach Haven. So I don't even know what that means.
Right.
And I pay taxes here.
Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom? Anybody else would like to speak? Okay.
Brian Boker, 5404 South Long Beach Boulevard. Just to make that record clear, in her husband's Superior Court statement, he points that he resides in Haddonfield. I know he points out that he resides in Beach Haven. If you'd like to see that Superior Court statement, I have it here for you to see. Would anyone like to see it?
Okay, I'm not arguing on that. Yes?
My name is Chuck Cook. I live at 6 Piney Run Road, Bedford, New Jersey. And I also have a summer house at 2705 Atlantic Avenue. I've been Elmer Pence's partner since 1972. And that's when we bought Beach Haven Automotive Inc. So we established Beach Haven Automotive Inc. and bought Kramer's Garage. Kramer's Garage, prior to our purchasing, had been a gas station for 50 years. All the problems that have been noted so far are mostly problems that are in that time frame 50 years before we bought it, not currently. I would like to correct some of the misstatements I believe I heard today. And indeed, I spoke to the borough with an email back to each of you with an email back on June the 1st, reiterating these items, and they seem to be overlooked. I am an engineer. I have been following this project pretty closely for the last 10 years. So in the last 10 years, we have done a lot of work on this project. I have been present at every major LSRP and the Mayo site investigation, and the same I am with Mark and his crew currently on their site investigations. Up through before Mark, we'd spent $350,000 with the Mayo and the prior LSRP. That's over a 10-year period. That just didn't happen tomorrow, yesterday, or the day before. We have excavated and discovered actually multiple tanks, 3 or 4 of which we knew were there, 2 or 3 which we didn't know were there, and have been excavated according to DEP requirements and have been closed. Is it the proper word? Abandoned in place per the DEP requirements, which include removing all contaminants inside and washing and cleaning the inside of the tanks, removing all this contaminated soil around the tanks. Also, I would like to correct the comment by Frank Little that the property had been abandoned. We actually had a lease with Burris and with the Tide Group up through February of this year. So we could not move on a sale until Burris decided not to pick up his option to buy the property. So we have been talking to the prospective buyers for probably 5 years. And now is the time we're going to act, and they have agreed to that. We've committed another $300,000 to the current LSRP to finish the remediation, and he is coming forward with facts and stuff, and it just finished last week, a complete new drilling of all the sites to get stuff off. So that's all I have to say, and I had offered in my email to you people back on June the 1st that I was available and Mark was available for any questions you had, and none were asked. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb?
Deb Woodcraft, 528 Dock Road. We had to go deal with some first aid matters. And thank you for what you said about the Pence Cook property. But Jim and I attended that land use board meeting, and it was very clear. I mean, the land use board members were very much in favor of eliminating the condemnation part of that and simply agreeing that the site was in need of rehabilitation, redevelopment. Now, the fact that you voted on a resolution that was inaccurate to begin with, you allowed this lady to speak, and yet you didn't allow these people to respond. I think it's such an improper vote that you took because you didn't have all the facts in front of you. We're paying a lot of money to these people to tell you what you want to hear. And as they pointed out, they've got hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in this property already and several $100,000 more. And for you to include the word condemnation when the land use board made it very clear that they did not want that included in that resolution, why did you even send it to the land use board if you weren't going to adhere to their recommendation? I'm just totally stymied on the fact that you even voted on something with half of the story without listening to the other half. And I commend you for your position. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom?
No.
Nobody else? Okay, so I'm closing the floor to public comment.
Thank you. I have Resolution 167, 2023, authorizing an executive session to discuss contract negotiations, redevelopment, ongoing litigation. I anticipate to be in the closed session approximately 1 hour. We do not intend to take any formal action in the closed session nor after when we return to public session. Do I have a motion to go into that executive session, approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to move to executive session. Thank you.
I'm not.
All right, at this time, we'll timestamp at 7:08. We're reconvening the public portion of our meeting, and we'll be offering final remarks for council.
All right. Mr. Batista, would you like to make a final remark?
I have full faith and confidence in the chief of our police department. Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Ballman.
No, thank you. I'm good.
Colleen Lambert, would you like to?
Have a good evening, everyone.
Kitty Snyder.
Thank you to everyone from the Sewer Authority, and thank you to everyone.
Nancy Davis is thanking Michael Batista for working so hard to get the Sewer Authority.
Yeah.
Okay.
All about
Do I have a
Michael.
motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Meeting adjourned.
Well, I'm